Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's hearing. My name is Councillor Donnelly. I shall be chairing the hearing with my colleagues, Councillors Dhin and Kuma, and we comprise today's subcommittee. I'll ask people to introduce themselves in a moment, but I can advise that today Hatun Zeb is the legal advisor to the subcommittee. Also present are Michelle Jalil, clerk to the subcommittee, who will be minuting the meeting, and Cornelia Harding, a second Democratic Services Officer, is also present. So before I continue, I just ask others who are present to introduce themselves. Perhaps Mr. Panchal, perhaps you can start, introduce yourself and your clients.
Sorry, I'm Mr. Panchal representing Hanwell News today, and my client Krishan Krupa is online already.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to introduce yourself, Mr. Krupa?
Yeah, hi there. My name is Kirshan, and of course I'm the licensee for Hanwell News.
Thank you.
Chair, can I ask that the applicant states his surname as well, please? The full name and not just first name.
Yeah, so my name is Kirshan Thangamani. I'm actually, you know, the Krupa is actually my dad's first name. You know, when I wasn't born in Germany, that's how they were. So in Germany it was a bit different in passport terms and anything, but yeah, in UK, in terms of UK, my name is Kirshan Thangamani.
Yeah, I'm going to establish relationships once we've gone a bit further.
No worries.
Can I ask the licensing officer to introduce himself, Mr. Deer?
Yes, good morning, Chair. My name is Bob Deer. I'm a licensing, compliance and enforcement officer, and also the applicant in this case.
The police are represented. PC Brown.
Yes, good morning. My name's PC Penny Brown. I'm from the police licensing team. Thank you.
Hatun, would you introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Hatun Zeb. I'm legal advisor to the licensing subcommittee this morning.
Thank you very much. So moving onwards. In accordance with the procedure, I'll invite the licensing authority to present the application for a review hearing and call any witnesses in respect of whom permission to appear has been given and answer any questions put to them. I'll invite the premises holder to make their representation and answer any questions. I'll then invite the parties to briefly sum up their respective cases. At the end of the hearing, the subcommittee, accompanied by the legal advisor, retire to consider its decision. The decision will be given at the end of the meeting and confirmed in writing within 5 working days. And within 5 working days, in the unlikely event that we would be unable to convey a decision today. Okay, can I invite now, so just for the sake of clarity, Mr. Kirshan Krupa, can you explain your relationship to the applicant?
Yes, certainly. So he used to actually live in a house very long time ago. So when I used to live with my, well, I still do, but when there was a time when we're talking about a long way back, he used to live in our house. There was a short period of time where he used to live in our house, and then that's it. Never seen him again.
No.
Sorry, Councillor.
Are you saying? Sorry, Mr. Panchal.
Yeah, can I come in? Because I think I've got a bit of a confusion here. We're asking the applicant relation to whom?
Well, Mr. Karupa is not the person who applied for a license. It's not the same name as the person who applied for a license when the license was given. So I'm just, for my own clarity, seeking to establish his relationship to the case.
Sorry, sir. He is the license holder.
He is the license holder.
Krishan Tangamani, the one that you're talking to now, he is the license holder.
Okay.
He is the license holder.
Fine. We'll move forward.
Chair, can I just come in? I think what you're trying to explain, Chair, which is quite
on the application that we did, so that was the sort.
We're a little bit confused here because Mr. Krishan Tangamani, who you have got online, is the license holder of Hanwell News.
Correct.
And hence that is the reason he is here. And I didn't understand.
And Mr. Pancho, you signed in the Kupra.
Sorry.
I've explained it to you guys earlier why that's the states, but that's just the Zoom name. I mean, I can change it if you're more than happy to do so. I didn't think that would be an issue.
Okay, apologies. I had technical problems there where I lost my I lost my sound sufficiently not to hear what either of you said properly. So perhaps, Mr. Deere, if you could start by saying what you said and follow up.
Yes, Chair. I think quite rightly you're asking, he did tell us the why he's using a different name, but you quite rightly say that this application has been served on Mr. Fangami. He signed in as Mr. Karupa, which fair enough, he's explained the reason for that name.
Correct.
Mr. Panchev is saying we've got the license holder in front of us. If that's the correct, that's fine. If that's the man who applied for this license, I'm happy.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for taking the time to sort out my own confusion. So, Mr. Deere, can I invite you to present your application for a review and present any witnesses?
Thank you, Chair. This application was made on the 29th of June of this year after more evidence was obtained about Hanwell News, which is an off licence at 116 Uxbridge Road, W7 8SU. These premises were originally held by Mr. Theokaran, who had that licence revoked after police and council visits to those premises and the way that premises was being run. Mr. Theokaran had that premises from the 24th of April 2015. He was visited on Friday the 16th of December 2016 by trading standards officers targeting off-licensing in West Ealing, Hanwell due to the antisocial behaviour, street drinking and believed illegal goings-on at those premises. They found hidden in the rear store 233 times 20 packets, that's 4,660 cigarettes. In the toilet, they found 16-litre bottles of Polish vodka and found a further 12-litre bottles of the same make on the shelves behind the counter. None had the UK duty labels attached. The DPS, Mr. Theokaran at the time, was not present at the time of that visit. The DPS and premises license holder signed a simple caution, admitted those offences on the 2nd of November 2017. Following the two visits detailed below in my statement, the premises licence was reviewed, and that decision of that subcommittee was to revoke the licence. Now, those visits were obviously on the 11th of January. We entered the shop, and the DPS, Mr. Theokaran, was alone in that shop, standing behind the counter. The purpose of our visit was explained, and he was seen to pick up a black bin liner that was filled with cardboard, and he could clearly see he was also holding a JD bag. I told him to put the bags down, and I heard a thud as he dropped something into a small open doorway. I walked around the counter and I found a JD bag that contained 98 packets, 20 packets of non-paid duty cigarettes, totaling 1,800. And on the shelf, we examined a selection of spirits, and we found 13 times 70 cl bottles of Smirnoff vodka that had the labels removed from the rear bottles and replaced with new labels to try and show, well, that they were actually duty paid, but it was duty diverted. So, and obviously the previous visit was in December of 2016. In total, from those two visits, 6,460 cigarettes and 41 bottles of vodka, 37 litres, were seized, and the unpaid duty on those products amounted to £2,900. A review was submitted on the 9th of April 2019, and a hearing held on the 5th of June of that same year. And as I said earlier, the decision of the subcommittee was to revoke that premises licence. Following the decision to revoke the premise licence, Mr. Thirukaran submitted an appeal to Ealing Magistrates Court. On the 29th of January 2020, the appeal was heard before District Judge Odiando, who dismissed the appeal on the grounds that the decision made by the council was not wrong. His full decision was exhibited. The next day, the 30th of January 2020, a joint licence visit was conducted by the police and the licence authority, where alcohol was openly on sale and illicit cigarettes were found in the rear store, the backyard, and behind the sales counter. Mr. Thirukaran was present with his sister, who left the premise immediately upon our arrival. On the 16th of March of this year, an application for a new premises application was then received in the name of Kirshan Finagami, who, although given the same address as Mr. Thirukaran, gave evidence, or evidence was given on his behalf, that there was no relationship between them. And in fact, Mr. Thirukaran resided in Germany. Despite strong representations from the police, supported by the lead licensing officer, myself at Ealing Council, the decision of the licence committee was to grant a new premises licence with conditions. In particular, that the previous licence holder, Mr. Thirukaran, was not allowed on those premises. The premises licence holder and the proposed, sorry, I'm going to 1 minute. On the, so I'm just looking for the date, it's the 10th of June at 12:15, I visit the premises that the shelves have been restocked with alcohol, and the premises licence issued on the 18th of May 2020 clearly shows that there was no DPS to authorise the sale of alcohol. As I entered the shop, there was a lone female behind the counter who gave her name as Thirukaran Jayamathi. When I pointed out there was no DPS, she picked up an envelope, took out the premises licence and said, "Yes, we have a licence." I went through the licence conditions with her, and the following conditions were being breached. Condition 27C, which is unable to produce a refusal book. Condition 14E, untrained in the use of CCTV. Condition number 5, not lockable shutters. And condition 24 and 22, which is no signage at all in the premises. I don't know if you can still hear me, Chair, but
I can. I can hear you. Can anyone else hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Chairman.
Right, it's Bob. Bob appears to have gone.
We should just wait until he comes.
Yeah, there's a red cross next to his name. The perils of the online world. I hope Bob realises we can't hear him. It's nothing worse than talking for a long time.
Yeah.
And then finding out that there was nobody there. There are worse things, but it's annoying. Could everybody get in touch with Mr. Deere?
I'll try and see. I may have.
Oh, he's back. I can see him.
Is he back?
Well, I can see him, but he's still got the red.
Oh, yeah, we can all
next to
see
his-
him, Chairman, but we can't.
Yeah.
hear
Well,
him.
I couldn't see him previously, so can somebody try to contact and check what's right? Thank you, Sam.
Hi, Mr. Panchal.
Hi, Bob. We can't hear you at all. We only got a.
No, it's my service is completely cut out. I'm going to go on another surface and come back in 2 minutes. I'll be back.
Okay. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Bye. So, Chairman, I just got in touch with Bob.
Yeah, thank you. I heard that. Very helpful.
You heard what he's just trying to get his service back.
I heard what. Yeah, heard what you said. Thank you.
Although we stand against each other, but we're still good friends.
Hello, Chair. Can you hear me?
Mr. Deere, can you hear us? Yes. Your other connection is still hanging there like an unwanted thing, but we can hear you on the new one. Councillor Kumar, you wanted to say something at this point? A point of clarification?
Yes, yeah, okay. On a point of accuracy, Mr. Sivakaran has actually offered to change the name and put it correctly. I think it's important that he does do that, and also if
well, I think can we deal with it? Can we deal with these things later rather than in the middle of Mr. Deer's evidence?
Yes, as long as he's aware of it.
I'll come to you for questions to Mr. Deer, shortly.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Deer, continue.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully everybody can hear me now, and I apologise for that. I think my service gave up the ghost. I started on the 10th of June of this year at 12:15. I visited the premises, but that was after. I'd like to just backtrack on my statement slightly. An application was received by Mr. Panchal on behalf of personal licence courses for the new applicant, Kirshan Fanagami, and I apologise if the pronunciation isn't that good. The Ealing Borough Police Licensing Team made representations under the Prevention of Crime and Disorder objective to the application, and they notified the licensing officer that authority that they requested that I give evidence on their behalf at any hearing. The reasons for making a representation was the previous history at the premises that resulted in the premises licence being revoked, and the fact that the applicant lived at the same address as the previous DPS and premises licence holder, Mr. Kamal. On the 6th of May 2020, due to the COVID-19 restrictions, a virtual hearing was held, and the applicant was represented by Mr. Panchal, who informed the subcommittee that the applicant was in contact with him via WhatsApp. In his presentation, Mr. Panchal informed the members that the applicant was a responsible person, as he was employed by Metro Bank, that he would do one shift every week at Hanwell News, employing a member of staff to work the other shifts, and that there was no relationship between him and the previous licence holder. He was not a personal licence holder at that present time because of the COVID restriction. He hadn't been able to take a qualification. And we wouldn't sell alcohol until he passed the course and obviously obtained a personal licence. The chair of that subcommittee raised concerns, like everybody else did, about the applicant having the same address as the previous licence holder, but Mr. Panchal again stated that there was no relationship between them, and that told members that the previous licence holder resided in Germany, and that a condition that the previous licence holder would not be allowed on the premises had been agreed. That application was granted, and obviously a decision is in the paperwork. I say on the 10th of June this year at 12:15, I visit the premises as the shelves have been restocked with alcohol, and the premises licence issued on the 18th of May clearly shows that there is no DPS to authorise the sale of that alcohol. As I entered the shop, there was a lone female behind the counter who gave a name as Karen Jeremathi. When I pointed out that there was no DPS, she picked up an envelope and took out the premises licence and said, "Yes, we have a licence." Obviously, hopefully you can tell that the first name, Karen, is the same as the previous licence holder, because she is actually the wife of Mr. Karen, the previous DPS and personal licence holder. And I did ask her at that meeting, that visit, when she lived in Germany. Well, a very shocked look came in her face, and she's never been in Germany. Mr. Karen has never been in Germany, never lived there, apparently. That's what he told me in front of another officer on a second visit. So we went through the licensing conditions with her, and the following conditions were being breached. Condition 27C, that's unable to produce a... Sorry?
Mr. Deer, just to move you on, we did hear that part.
Lovely,
so
okay.
If you can move on to the bit subsequent to that.
No problems. So whilst in the premises, 5 people came in and asked for cigarettes and was told that they do not sell tobacco. They all left the shop straight away after being told. After the first person came in, I said to the shop assistant that they are allowed to sell cigarettes, but she just shrugged her shoulders. I spoke to the premises licence holder on the telephone, it's Mr. Thanagami, and told him that there was no person was nominated as DPS on the licence. The retail sale of alcohol was to cease with immediate effect, and he stated that he had applied 2 months ago. He was informed that no application to specify the DPS had been submitted to the licence authority at Ealing. The licence breaches above were pointed out, and he was told to rectify the problem immediately. He was told that he would receive a first and final warning letter. When I examined the cans of beer in the fridge, I noticed a lot of cans had no English writing and sell-by dates on, whilst others were well past their sell-by dates. Upon examination, a bottle of Famous Grouse, the label on the rear was stuck on lower than the other bottles, and the label was creased, which indicated to me it indicated to me that the original label had been removed and a new one stuck on. This bottle was signed over for destruction. Whilst at the premise, I was contacted by Mr. Panchow, and the breach were explained to him, and due to the seriousness of the offences, that a review of the premises was being considered. On the 18th of June 2020, I received an email from the police licence team that they'd visited the premises the previous night. That's the 17th of June. And that email read, at about 1940 hours, we entered the venue just behind a customer. The customer reached behind the fabric screens that were pulled over the chiller section and selected bottles of Stella that he placed on the counter. The staff member placed these inside a black plastic bag, and the customer went to the back of the store for another item. My colleague and I were in full uniform and identified ourselves to the lady working behind the counter as licensing officers. She immediately took the black bag with single bottles of Stella and placed them behind the counter. Stood on the floor behind the back of the store was Mr. Thera Karen, the previous DPS and premises licence holder. He was recognised from a previous visit. When asked if he was working, he said he wasn't. He started to explain that a council employee believed to be Mr. Deere from Trading Standards had been in last week and told them that there was a problem with the screen coverings on the chiller section that needed to be repaired and that someone was coming to do so. He went to leave and pointed towards a lady that was behind the counter and said it was only her working. I confirmed his details before he walked out. The female staff member did not sell the Stella to the customer, who purchased the soft drink only and left. The fact that she had placed them in a carry bag suggests she would have sold them, but had uniform officers not just walked in. Mr. Therakan returned and handed me his phone, which was connected to the new premises licence holder, Mr. Thanagami. He wanted to know why police were there, and I explained that he had only just arrived and were doing a licensing check. I pointed out the breaches in the licence conditions of Mr. Therakan on the premises. He said he had asked him to come as a favour because of the fridges, and he'd also asked him to explain the business as a handover, as he had not had the licence for very long. He was told this was unacceptable, and there's a breach. So that's the alarm going off at Purcell House. Which was valid from the 6th of the 5th, 2020, and was issued on the 18th of the 5th, 2020. He told me that he wouldn't do it again and said that I should trust him, and this was the case, and he wouldn't be allowed back in the shop. I also told him we hadn't done any other checks yet, but had already seen someone about to buy single bottles of alcohol. He told me that he knew that he wasn't allowed to sell singles, and so they were telling customers there to buy more than one at a time. He offered to show me the CCTV to prove this. When the call was terminated, I took details from the female staff member and checked the premises licence. There is no currently DPS on the licence, and so no alcohol should be sold at all. The female staff member said she knew this, although from what was already seen and what Mr. Thanagami said, it seemed alcohol sales had been taking place. We looked at some of the alcohol that was covered in the chillers. There were nearly all single bottles and cans and priced on the shelf as an individual item. There were no prices or signage for multiple sales, etc. Female staff member was Jan Matthew Thera Karen. She said that her and her husband are living in the flat above the shop. Mr. Thera Karen is the previous premise licence, is not allowed in the shop or to be involved in the run of the business. On the 18th of June 2020 at 7:35 p.m, Mary McLaughlin, an environment health officer, and I visited the shop again to serve the first and final warning letter and When I went to the rear yard, sat on a stool was the previous licence holder, Mr. Thera Karen. I pointed out that he was not allowed in the premises as stated on the premises licence, and he said that he lived above. When I told him that I was informed that he lived in Germany, he stated that he had never lived there and looked very puzzled as to why I'd mentioned Germany. I spoke to the new premises licence holder on the telephone as he was not present and pointed out the breaches of the premises licence to him verbally and requested that he download CCTV. He stated that he was unable as there was a fault. Whilst I explained the warning letter to him, I also confirmed that he worked part-time for Metrobank, where he worked 2 days a week. It was also explained that 8 days after telling him that no application specified a DPS had been received by a licence authority, still no application had been made. The warning letter was left on the premises for him, and a receipt was signed by Mrs. Thera Karen Jeremathi, and I left the premises. I then returned to the premises yesterday morning, where, excuse me, and this is the statement that was served yesterday. Basically, it says, I am employed by the Ealing Council as a licensed compliance and enforcement officer, and as such authorised under Licensing Act 2003 to carry out inspections and check for offence at licensed premises. Currently, there are 8 off licences within a 250-metre radius of the Hanwell clock tower, and all apart from Price Cutter are permitted to sell alcohol from 8 AM and 2 have earlier opening hours. Hanwell News being one of them, which they can open from 6 o'clock. Approximately 6 AM on the 15th, Brian Gohery, a senior trading standards environment enforcement officer with Ealing Council, and I visited the Hanwell after complaints that early morning street drinking and antisocial behaviour had increased around the clock tower. Upon checking the off licences, Price Cut was already open with 1 member of staff, and all the others were shut and in darkness. At 6:07, the lights came on inside Hanwell News, and 3 minutes later, the shutters were raised. A female, who I know as Thera Karen Jeremathi, who is the wife of the previous premises licence holder, came out and swept and cleaned outside the front of the shop. At 6:20, a short white male with a bald head entered the store. He could be seen standing in the middle of the shop and appeared to be waiting for another customer to leave. When the other customer left, he walked to the rear of the shop and was passed something by the female Jeremathi. He then left the shop and walked towards the clock tower, where it could be clearly seen that he had a beer can in his trousers pocket. At 6:35, a white male wearing a 3/4 length shorts and a baseball cap entered the shop, carrying nothing. He was inside for 2 minutes, and he came out of the shop and turned left. And in his right hand, he had a blue plastic bag, which you could clearly see contained 4 cans of Zubra Polish beer. At 7:20, the bald male from 6:20 returned to the shop and walked to the rear of the shop and engaged in a conversation with the lone female, Jeremathi, who turned and went into the rear store. She returned and was seen to hand a black can of beer to him, which he took in his right hand. We entered the store and identified ourselves, and the female, Thera Karen Jeremathi, started to shout, "No, no, don't come in here," being aggressive towards the male she had served beer to, and tried to take one of the cans back from him. The male turned to us, and I could see that it was a can of Black Perla, ABV 7.6%. The male was so inebriated that his eyes were nearly closed and he was unable to speak without slurring. He just lifted his hands up in front of him. He was very placid. However, Jeremathi continued to try and accuse him after taking the can of beer from him, and we asked him to leave. As I turned to the shop assistant, a can of green perla fell out the back of her sweatshirt. I then requested her to download the CCTV footage as per the conditions, and she stated she was unable as it was in the ceiling. I took a photograph of the large beer fridge where the metal shutters that had been fitted since a previous visit were clearly not completely shut. And when I looked, when I looked in the small freezer that is used to store bags of ice and moved the top bags, I found 3 cans of Skull Super Strength 8% ABV, and I now exhibit the 2 photographs. The point of that second visit, or third visit in fact, since a very short lifespan of a premises license, is that there is a condition that no alcohol above 6% is allowed to be sold from the shop. And I say the Black Pearl is 7.6 and the super strength was 8% that was found hidden, concealed in the freezer. Ellis, picture's gone again.
No, we can see and hear you.
You can see me.
Hear you, Mr. Deer.
That's right, lovely. My assistant will not be able to.
You.
Right, can you hear me now? Yes, lovely. I shall continue.
We've been able to hear you continuously.
Lovely, thank you. It's very off-putting when the screen goes out, and so the point is, I say it's 6%. From inquiries from yesterday, the male that was sold at 6.20 and 7.20 is in fact in the top 6 street drinkers of Hanwell, as they've been identified as a street drinker, and that is my evidence for this review, sir.
Thank you. Okay, can I have you any witnesses to call, Mr. Dean?
I have no witnesses, but I'm aware there is a representation from Penny Brown of the Metropolitan Police.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Well,
Sorry.
I'll take that representation now from PC Brown.
Thank you. Sorry for that. Yes, obviously you've heard from Mr. Deer. A lot of our evidence is the same, as obviously we have been working together, and we were both present at the hearing for the applicant when he tried to get when he was issued with the licence. So I will try not to repeat too much of what has already been said. As you know, there was a premises licence which was revoked when Mr. Thivakaran had the licence, and as we've already said, the current licence was given to Mr. Thangamani on the 6th of May this year, when we had the hearing about whether or not that should be granted. And as Mr. Deer stated, the police did put in strong objections against that licence being issued. The main reasons for the police objecting were concerned that Mr. Thivakaran would still be involved in the running of the business. And a great proportion of the hearing was spent discussing that and discussing the relationship between him and Mr. Thangamani, and trying to bottom out how they were involved, how they knew each other, and how the business would be run going forward. So there was absolutely
Can I just stop you there? And Mr. Deer, can you put yourself on mute? We can hear you shuffling your papers, and it's actually caused your video to cut in at one point.
Apologies.
So thank you. Sorry, PC Brown.
No problem, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to make it sort of abundantly clear that during that hearing, there was no doubt whatsoever, and there could be no misunderstanding, that it was not going to be acceptable for Mr. Thivakaran to be involved in the business going forward, to the extent that it was put forward that that would be a condition on the licence, that Mr. Thivakaran is not permitted to conduct any business on behalf of Hanwell News, and is not to be inside the shop area or storerooms of Hanwell News. So it was made abundantly clear, it was discussed at length, there was no doubt about this. During that hearing, we have been told as well that Mr. Thangamani had already been playing an interest in the shop and the running of it, as he said that he had an interest in it and was trying to ascertain how it was run so that he would be ready if and when the licence was granted. So that was already in place. So there would be no reason for Mr. Thivakaran to then be at the premises after that date. So, as we've established, the licence was granted with those conditions. In addition, there was another condition that was granted, which stated that Mr. Thangamani was to provide documentation to Ealing Council licensing team, showing that the lease of the premises has been transferred into his name within 3 months. So that would have been from the 6th of May. So that should have been done in August. To my knowledge, that has not been done, but I will stand to be corrected if someone from the council can tell me otherwise. But again, that was something to clear up the fact that we didn't want Mr. Thivakaran involved in the business, and we didn't want him at the site at all. And we were assured that this was not going to be happening, and that he wasn't living at the flat upstairs, and he wasn't living in the outbuilding out the back. That's what we were all assured. So the police, we didn't re-attend the premise until the 17th of June 2020. So that was 6 weeks after the licence was issued, and unknown at that time, it was a week after Mr. Deer had already been and obviously spoken to them about breaches that were going on, as we've already heard evidence from Mr. Deer. He has already read out to you the email that I sent to him, establishing exactly what we had seen. And so it was apparent from, as you've heard from the email, it was apparent that the sale of single alcohol, single bottles, cans was about to take place, that the Mr. Thivakaran had told us over the phone that he was selling alcohol, because he said that he was advising customers that they needed to buy more than one at a time to make it a multi-buy. So he told us that the alcohol sales were happening. And as we've already established as well, that there was no DPS on the licence, and to my knowledge, there is still no DPS on the licence. So the alcohol should not have been sold. And the female staff worker there at the time, Jamathi Thivakaran, she told us that she was aware that there was no alcohol to be sold, which presumably is why she tried to conceal it when we entered. And she would have known this because Mr. Deer had spoken to her directly about that the week before. So to sum up, really, I think it's all been said here that the police are not happy with the way the premises have been run, the conditions that were set there, you know, that having Mr. Thivakaran on the premises, having involved on the business, invited there by Mr. Thangamani is not acceptable. It was made abundantly clear, it was put on the conditions of the licence, and so we are not happy with the way the premises is being run. In addition to obviously the alcohol being sold when there's been no DPS, the shutters not being lockable over the alcohol, and as Mr. Deer has given additional evidence to the sale of high strength alcohol. So it's my belief that the premises are not being run responsibly and will continue to be run so, and this licence should therefore be revoked. Thank you.
Thank you, PC Brown. I'll call in Mr. Panchal to ask questions in a second, but just on the point of clarification, Mr. Deer, can you give us any information as to whether the license, the name of the license, was transferred within the 3-month period that was previously specified?
Chair, not to my knowledge. I was told that there was a delay at, I believe it was Redbridge, in the production of the personal license of the premises license holder. But we are producing licenses here at Ealing, so I don't know why there is a delay at Redbridge.
Okay, well, that is perhaps something that can be covered by evidence elsewhere. Mr. Panchal, have you got questions for either or Mr. Deer or PC Brown?
Yes, Chairman. Thank you very much, Chairman. I have a lot of questions that I need to clarify. First of all, to Mr. Bob Deer. We are here today listening about the license of Mr. Krishan Tanagamani. I'm sorry I'll say Krishan rather than the whole surname if I'm not pronouncing it well. Am I right in saying that, Bob?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
So why are we discussing about the license that was previously revoked? Because you put a lot of evidence in regarding the license which was previously revoked. We're today here coming to a hearing from Mr. Krishan's license.
Mr. Panchal, the evidence has been the evidence has been given, and the panel will decide to what degree the evidence that's been given was relevant.
Yes, so Chairman, just to clarify when I put my report in, so you can understand what I'm saying. During the new application, of Mr. Krishan, when Krishan's application was coming, I would like to ask Bob, when the license was granted, one of the conditions was that Mr. Thanga, the previous owners, would not be involved into any kind of business with Mr. Krishan. So have you any evidence to prove that there is an involvement of business with the previous owners?
Well, my answer to that will be simply one, Mr. Theerakaran has been seen in the premises twice.
So my answer to the question is there any evidence showing that he has a business like a bank account?
Mr. Panchal, that doesn't...
Sorry, Mr. Deer. Mr. Panchal, if anybody's going to interrupt answers in the context of the hearing, it'll be me from the chair.
Yes, Chair.
So allowing Mr. Deer to answer the question, if I think he's deviating from the point or answering inappropriately, I will intervene to say so. But this meeting won't progress smoothly if you seek to interrupt him. Particularly, it's hard enough when we all meet together. It's even more difficult when we're doing it in the online world. So if you'll have the patience to allow that, I'd be grateful.
Thank you, Chair. I'll answer that question, and I'll answer it in a way that I think is suitable, and not, should we say, that the answer that is required by Mr. Panchal. Mr. Theerakaran has been seen on those premises twice. The time Mr. Thangami has a problem, who does he call? Mr. Theerakaran, because they are close friends. No, there is no, Mr. Theerakaran's name is not seen anywhere on the license. It's not seen on the company name if there is one. I'm sure, hopefully, there's no bank account with his name on, but I haven't seen a lease with Mr. Thangami's name from Mr. Theerakaran. Perhaps that will prove it. But 3 months later, we're still waiting for that. So, as I say, when we have a problem, who do we call? Mr. Theerakaran. And if we're talking about business, that is one man I wouldn't trust in business and how to run a business. Chair, thank you.
I will present, Chairman, more on the business side of point of view.
Okay, well, I think you're.
But I'm just at the moment trying to.
Opinions about trust or otherwise are neither here nor there, Mr. Deer. But sorry, Mr. Panchal.
Sorry, Chair. The other thing that I would like to clarify to ask Mr. Bob, that as soon as I know the license was issued by the council.
Carry on.
And the license was stated that person license number and issuing authority not applicable when it came to the name of DPS. In other words, the DPS wasn't stated. We had applied, which I'm going to put in my on my statement later. So as soon as you visited the premises, a question to Mr. Bob Deer, and you were told that there is no DPS, did the premises stop selling alcohol the following day? Sorry, the question is, did the premises stop selling alcohol as soon as they were informed that there is no DPS?
Mr. Deer?
Right, from my visit, when the shutters were up, alcohol was on display. Yes, the shutters have been... I can hear you, Chair, now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The shutters have come down. The screen has been replaced with a shutter, but however, alcohol is still being sold. As of yesterday morning, that was witnessed by myself.
Okay. So, no, but initially when you went in, when there was no DPS, and you informed them that there is no DPS, so the alcohol should stop. So did they stop selling alcohol from then?
The same answer, Mr. Panchal. Yes, they were told, they were fully aware. However, the police saw them selling alcohol on the 17th.
Okay. That's all, Chairman. I don't have much questions at the moment. I'll bring everything else in my presentation. That's all, Chair. Sorry. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
You...
Sorry, Chair, I haven't got any more questions, please.
I can hear you, Mr. Panchal, but okay, thank you. That's fine. Just any questions from councillors? Councillor Kuma to Mr. Deer or PC Brown?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Can I firstly, I mean, I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. For point of accuracy, I would prefer the names to be, seen online and registered correctly as per the statements. And by that, I mean, Mr. Sangamani and also Jayamathi Thivakaran, because Jayamathi Thivakaran has been referred to as Thivakaran Jayamathi, but Jayamathi is the first name. So, if that can be corrected, because even in the statements, it shows the names differently. My question to Mr. Dare is, when you were offered, in your statement, you say that you pointed it out that to Mr. Thangamani that he wasn't allowed to sell singles, and but he said to you that they were telling customers that they had to buy more than one at a time. And he offered to show you the CCTV to prove this. Did you see the CCTV?
No, Councillor, and he wouldn't have been able to produce it because obviously he couldn't produce it to me when I asked to see it a week later.
Okay. What was the reason for not seeing it then?
Any further? Sorry.
Obviously, once I saw the breaches, the easiest way, as you quite correctly say, is to prove or disprove it, is to produce the CCTV that should be working, not only for the benefit of and the safety of the staff and customers, but obviously for the business and to prevent crime and disorder. Apparently, there was a problem with the CCTV, and I'm still waiting for CCTV from last night, yesterday morning's visit that I requested to prove or disprove those offences.
Okay, and one more question. When you've gone in on these various visits, you've just seen one member of staff, because you referred to Mrs. Thangamani in your statements.
Yes, Councillor, that is the only person I've ever seen working in that shop behind that counter since the new licensee took over. And in respect of her name, when I asked her to write her details down, she wrote T Fanagami down on a piece of paper and handed it to me. And I asked her, that was when I asked her, what does the T stand for? And she said, Thera Karen.
Okay. Right, but that explains what I've seen on your statement, because it's Jayamathi Thivakaran, and then once she gave you the receipt, it shows, and you're obviously correct in putting it down as T Jayamathi, because that's what she signed on the receipt she gave you. Okay, that clarifies my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dinser, have you questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Well, a few questions, Chair. First question is, quite a lot is made in the statement from Mr. Dhin about Mr. Thingakaran living in Germany. Is that a material consideration in this case?
Well, it is because sorry, Chair. Was
Chair,
you?
I think the legal advisor will advise us. I think Hatum Zeb will perhaps advise us whether or not it's a legal material. It's a material consideration, rather than it being Mr. Deer's opinion. It's in the statement. We can either accept it or not accept it, but we'll get advice on that later.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair. On page 26.
Sorry, carry on, Councillor Dinser.
Yeah, on page 26, Mr. Deer, you say you gave first and final warning letter. Is that what we normally do? First and final warning letter on the first occasion?
Yes, indeed, unless the offences are so serious that they can't be rectified, or, for instance, in the respect of, and not in this case, in other cases where there's been seizure of cigarettes, large amounts, it's straight to a prosecution or a review.
Okay, and I was going to ask the same question as Councillor Kumar, that why didn't you look at the CCTV when you was offered to look at it?
I would have loved to have watched it, Councillor, but when I requested it, there'd been a fault with it.
Mm. Okay, and hold on, I'm shuffling through my papers. On page 41, a statement from PC Brown. I know I will be asking PC Brown as well, but I'm asking you this. In the statement, it says that Mr. Thivakaran is not permitted to conduct any business or be inside the shop area or storeroom. Yeah, but on page 28, you saw him in the rear yard. Is that one of the conditions?
Yes, the rear yard is within the licensed ambit of the premises.
It's not, Chairman. I can correct that.
Well, you can take the opportunity to correct that when you make your presentation.
Yeah.
May I be given the opportunity to just comment on where I saw him as per the statement on page 41 that's being referred to by the councillor?
Yes.
Thank you. When I attended, he was in the store, on the shop floor, towards the back of the store, but actually on the shop floor, and he walked through the shop floor to exit via the front of the shop, and then returned a little while later through the front door into the main shop area. But he was stood on the shop floor when I first entered, so he was in the shop.
What date was that? Sorry, Penny.
That was when police attended. We attended on the 17th of June.
Is that in the statement, PC Brown?
I believe it should be. If you bear with me, I will find the page, but it was would have been mentioned in the email that I'd sent to Mr. Deer when he gave his evidence. If you bear with me, I will find where I saw him. Page 42.
Page 42, for 42 or 54, it is there.
Page 42, the third line down, stood on the shop floor towards the back of the store was Mr. Thivakaran, the previous premises licence holder and DPS.
Okay, but you did say the applicant has...
that is there.
Okay, all right. Okay, I have no more questions here. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any questions for Mr. Deer or PC Brown. So I'll now ask Mr. Panchal to present the case on behalf of the premises license holder. Will you be calling your client as a witness?
Chairman, my client is online, and if there is any questions that anybody wants to ask, or anybody who feels free to ask whatever I've presented, is most welcome to ask him. That is the way I will be putting my presentation. He is there as a license holder, and he is there for everybody to ask any questions if they wish to ask. I will do my best in presenting as much evidence as I can.
Well, I think, Mr. Panchal, for the purposes of clarity, we will direct our questions to you. If you can't answer your question and you believe that your client can answer the question better or at all, then I suggest that you direct the question to him rather than us having to work out to which of you to direct a question. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairman. I'll do that. I'll make it simple and quick. Chairman, first of all, this license was granted by the committee. We are today discussing about the license which was granted by the committee. We are discussing matters which were already discussed at the hearing when the license was granted. Unless and until we're going to go back to that grant of the license by that committee, which was not right, and that is what Bob Deere at the moment is saying to you, that what the committee granted was not right. Well, that Bob Deere and Penny all had a chance, if they wanted to appeal at the district magistrate's court, to say, well, we're not happy with the decision, so we would like to appeal for it, which they did not. So that matter should
Can
be.
I just pause?
Can I
pause you, Mr. Pantel, just to check that you received Mr. Deer's statement that was added to the bundle yesterday?
Yes, I did. Yes,
that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, but
that makes me feel better. Good. Carry on.
Because I need to put the question in perspective very well. So I'm getting things one at a time, so you to understand. So my general view was, all the discussions regarding grant of this license was discussed at the committee meeting, and everybody were given a chance to put their views at that particular meeting. The committee granted that license. There were 21 days for any people who had objected to either go to the magistrate's court and then appeal for it, which it did not. Once that license was granted, Christian became the license holder. The only mistake we got at that particular instance, it wasn't a mistake. COVID-19 came up. Some of the councils stopped working. Some of the councils went away home to work. So the licenses weren't issued as quickly as we expected. We had applied for Christian's personal license at where he was staying, which was at the Redbridge Borough Council. 14 days by the legal law, licensing law, an application for any personal license is put up, and if it's not granted within 14 days, by tacit law, your legal department will tell you that, by tacit law, it automatically seems to be granted. It happens in a similar way when we are looking at premises licenses. This is from my experience being a licensing consultant. We kept on going down to the only issue left at Ealing Borough Council to issue the premises license was that there was no DPS, and we were supposed to provide the license, personal license number of the DPS to make it granted. Redbridge Borough Council had closed down. We did all the avenues. We sent email literally every other day. We called. Christian would explain to you that he visited the Redbridge Borough Council, and there was nobody there to answer anything. We were all frustrated that how could we get this personal license when 14 days have already passed, the CRB had been corrected, and we can then approve and then get this license. In the meantime, the Ealing Borough had already granted this premises license, sent the copy of the license to us, and we had sent it to Christian for the license. He thinking that now he's got a premises license so he can operate. When the visit was made by Mr. Bob Deere, yes, not realizing the staff had started selling alcohol and were informed that you cannot, and they rang us and we immediately informed Christian, and we also said to Christian that please, no alcohol should be sold because we haven't got the DPS's personal license yet. We've just recently got the personal license from Redbridge Borough Council after a long standing. We did everything that we could. So that was the issue there, where the alcohol was sold and not sold, and the alcohol was displayed and up and down. That's number one, regarding why the DPS wasn't being nominated and why Christian's DPS did not come in. That explains the matter, why all the mess had come into place. In the meantime, Christian had just bought the premises from Mr. Thivakaran and them. So whenever you buy anything from anybody who owns, you are entitled to get as much information from the previous owners as you can to digest how you're going to run that business. So he is not taking any business interest, or he's not paying any business interest to the past owner, as informed in the committee meeting when I came for the hearing. All he's doing is he's taking as much. Sorry, I'm just looking at what Mrs. Zam is asking. When was this license now issued? But I will be able to produce that in a minute, because I'm in my office now, so I'll be able to produce you that license when it was issued. But it's just recently issued, the license from Redbridge Borough Council. The other thing is, there is a condition. I'm right in front of you here, the bundle. When that license was issued after that hearing, the condition of the license, which is condition number 9, which states, if you go into your bundle on page 34 of 54, which clearly states, Mr. Kathirasesan Thivakaran, who is the previous owner, is not permitted to conduct any business. Is not permitted to conduct any business for or on behalf of Hanwell News, and is not to be inside the shop area or storeroom or Hanwell News. This condition applies. This condition applies. We need to understand this. This condition applies during licensable activity. If there was no licensable activity carried out, this condition does not apply. None of the condition applies. So you need to understand that there is no DPS. So we inform the clients that you will not sell alcohol. We inform Christian that you will not sell alcohol till we get the DPS personal license in, when you can do your licensable activity. Now, during that period, when there is no licensable activity carried out, Mr. Thivakaran, who is the previous owner, is allowed to go into the premises. Please make note of that. That's one of my arguments.
Can you point me, Mr. Panchal, just so that perhaps it makes life easier later? Can you point me to the documentation that supports that interpretation that you've just made?
Well, Chairman, if you look at page 34 of 54, the conditions on the license number 9, or any condition which your legal department will explain to you, any condition on any license is during the licensable activity. You cannot enforce any condition onto any premises if there are no licensable activities carried on. It is a straightforward thing. We are hearing today this license because there is a license we are talking about today in this committee. If there was no license, we would not be discussing anything today. Am I right in saying that? So that is what I'm trying to make you understand.
Well, the panel will take appropriate legal advice upon what.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please do. But my interpretation of the law is that we can only discuss a license if there is a licensable activity and a license is granted. That is the licensing committee's matter to be discussed. But if there is no licensable activity, we cannot discuss anything. So in here, the licensable activity only takes place when there is a DPS available. So there was no DPS available. We were instructed, and I instructed my clients that because we do not have a DPS, you cannot sell alcohol. So if you do not sell alcohol, there is no licensable activity can take place at the premises. That's my argument. Now, argument number two, and further information for your matter is, Chairman, we're not going to say we are clean and clear. We're not going to. I'm not here to tell you that the premises is absolutely clean and clear. Yes, they have made a mistake, whereby there is a construction work going on expansion of the premises at the back. The builders are working there. The builders have brought their own alcohol and put it into the fridge or whatever. But the builders are there. If the lady has sold any alcohol, we do apologize for that. That she shouldn't have sold any alcohol. According to Christian, who is going to tell you that, he was totally informed, and he informed the staff that, and you could see that when Mr. Deer visited the premises, she clearly said to the other person, "I'm not allowed to sell the cigarettes at the moment." But then Mr. Bob Deer said, "Well, cigarettes don't come under the Licensing Act, so you're allowed to sell." But that's the view, and then Christian will also, if there is anything that you want to ask Christian, he was also informed and told that the licensable activity cannot take place till and then a DPS is nominated. So unfortunately, because of COVID-19 and what happened at Redbridge Borough, very unfortunate. We've never come across such a thing in our life, but we did this year. With COVID, we've come across lots of things that has delayed. Lots of problems have created at councils, where council people are working from home. We're all working sometimes from home, and we get into trouble. So matters don't get resolved as quickly as we want. So in this instance, matter just went beyond our expectation. When by law, if in 14 days, license application is put in and not replied back, by tacit law, according to what I know from legal part of it, although I'm not a lawyer, from tacit law, it also applies to a premises license after 28 days of consultation. Within 20 days, if there is no hearing set up and if there is nothing done, by tacit law, automatically the license is granted. So that's what I understand. So, Chairman, if there was any
just to be clear, just to summarise what you've said so far,
yeah.
Are you arguing that when the officers visited the premises, because since the licence was granted, because in your view the licence wasn't yet in operation, there cannot have been a breach?
Yeah, because Chairman, if you look at all the shutters were down on the beers, and as soon as they visited for the first time, and because they were in the impression that because the license is issued, so we could sell. And as soon as they were told, no, you can't sell because we still haven't got the DPS, so they immediately stopped. And that was my question.
I just need you to answer that question.
Yes, Chairman.
Issues about the shut. There may be questions about the shutters and their operation.
Yes, Chairman.
Later. Are you saying that the license wasn't in operation and therefore there wasn't a breach?
If the license was operation, sorry, Chairman, if the license was in operation, yes, they could breach the conditions laid out on the license. If there was no license on the premises, there is a breach. I'm not saying there isn't a breach. There is an unlicensable activity carried out, which is a breach again. I'm not saying no to that. I'm not saying that the breach cannot happen. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that the shutters were put down immediately when they were told that you cannot sell alcohol anymore. And if they were sold, it is a mistake of the client, which I would say, yes, if there was a breach carried out. But now the privacy, we've now got the personal license granted. We will be sending in the personal license to the Ealing Borough Council to nominate into the license, and matters will be looked in. My personal view at the moment, Chair,
I just want to draw you back. You appeared to make this argument, and I don't want to misrepresent you, which is why I'm asking you further. It's an argument that you seem to make in the context of the presence of Mr. Tivakaran on the premises. You were saying because no licensable activity was taking place, the condition barring him from the premises did not apply.
Well, that would be correct in saying that if there is no licensable activity.
That's right. I'm just checking that that's what you're saying. That
yes,
okay,
Chairman.
Carry on.
I'll clearly state that if there is no licensable activity to be carried out, then it wouldn't be a breach for Mr. Previous one, Thivakaran. Sorry, it's the name is a bit. The previous owner could go into the premises. It's like saying we had a license carried out in Richmond Borough where the landlord was banned from going into the premises, but he could walk in to go and get his rent, or he could go in after the licensable activity, which would be after 11 o'clock, because he wouldn't be able to carry.
Is Mr. Thivakaran the landlord?
He's not the landlord.
You raised that subject. Okay, we'll carry on. In that case, let's move on to the next point, I suggest.
He's not the landlord. So that's my point. And since now that the personal license has been granted, and maybe we have carried out a few mistakes here and there during this fuss of getting the license here and there, we're happy to say to the committee that now that we've come to the hearing point, we're happy to say to the committee that the mistakes that we've made, a few mistakes that have been carried out at the premises, we're happy to be given a suspension of 1 month to go back onto the board for Mr. Christian and now to get everything back into its place and to make sure now that the licensable activity is going to be carried out, and then such an error cannot happen in future. So that's my view to the committee presently with this hearing. There is whether Mr. Thivakaran lives in Germany or lives in France, because initially when we were fighting his case, or the previous owner's case, he used to come all the way from Germany for his hearing. It happened on one of the cases in at the Ealing Magistrates Court, when he drove straight from Germany to the hearing. And we asked, where have you come from? Well, I live in Germany, so I've come. So that is why we always had a feeling that he lives in Germany. He does have a premises in Germany. I'm not saying he doesn't have, but at the moment he's here, living on top of the shop, which he is allowed to. You cannot restrict him, but you can restrict him during licensable activity to come into the shop. You can restrict him to come into the store when the licensable activity is carried on, because that is the part of the condition number 9 that we are looking at on the license. So, Chairman, that is my view, that to carry forward and move forward with this case, in my view, this is my view, that a license be suspended for 1 month where we could go back. Again, the license is still not active at the moment because the personal license has just been issued by the Redbridge Borough Council, which in a minute I will be able to even show you when it was issued. So that is my view.
Sorry, Chair, I don't know if Mr. Panchel's finished.
Chair, Mr. Deere, I'll call you in when I want you. Don't worry. Just to be clear from my own point, Mr. Panchal, you've not submitted any evidence regarding your client's application at Redbridge, have you?
I am going to be doing it now, Mr. Chairman. I have got the license here in my office.
Okay, but just checking that you have, that there haven't been any emails about this in the intervening period.
No, I haven't, because I've got it now.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Mr. Deere, I'm going to call Mr. Deere in now. Mr. Deere, have you questions for Mr. Panchal?
Yes, I have, Chair. The premises license was granted. It quite clearly states on, if I just get to the front of this paperwork, it was valid from the 6th of May 2020 and issued on the 18th of May 2020. And on it, it says the premises opening hours. Well, it's my view that if the premises opening hours are from 6 in the morning to 11, that condition stands, that Mr. Thivakaran should not be on that premises. Would he agree with that during those times?
Yeah, he would agree to that. He wouldn't be there for any licensable activity. If there was
it doesn't matter, Mr. Pancha. What my argument is, it doesn't matter if it's a license of activity. What I'm saying, the opening hours are part of that premises license that was granted on the issued on the 18th of May 2020. It says opening hours 6 a.m. till 23 Monday to Saturday. That condition is in force when that license, that premises is open. That's my, so you're different. That's what I'm saying. That's your opinion.
Sorry, Chairman, I am different and I will remain different from the legal point of view. From the legal point of view, your legal department.
I think I'm clear as to the position.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. From the legal point of view,
taken. And
yeah, from
Chair,
Chair, can I take legal? Yeah,
Chair, is it possible for me to come in just very quickly? Sorry, I'm putting the question. I'm putting the questions into the chat to try and direct where this is going. Mr. Panchal, you've said on a number of occasions from a legal point of view, and I'm trying to understand your legal point of view so that I can then advise the panel and so you're aware of the advice that I'm providing. Now, the difficulty I'm having is that I don't understand your legal point of view. The license was issued in this matter to your client following the hearing. The licensable hours have been highlighted by Mr. Deere just now. So my question was, are you saying that the condition, well, I think you've just accepted that the condition that Mr. Thivakaran is not permitted to conduct any business for or on behalf of Hanwell News and is not to be inside the shop area or storerooms of Hanwell News, full stop. So that is the condition I think that we're discussing here, and it's specifically the latter part of it. So are you saying that you accept that condition was in effect as of the date that the license was issued or not?
My best of my knowledge, let's put it like that. I'm not a legal. I'm not saying I legally challenge it, but I'm saying from my best of my knowledge on what I know about legal, is if there is no licensable activity carried out, whether the license is granted from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock, if the license is not in force, then there is no licensable activity and there are no conditions that can be challenged. That's my view.
So, no, that's fine. So that's helpful. So why are you saying that the license is not in force? Once the license has been issued and your client is trading in accordance with that license, so the premises are open and operating, I then would ask you, what is it that you mean that it's not in force? What do you mean in operation?
The license is not in operation because the license hasn't got a DPS. If the license doesn't have a DPS, it cannot be enforced.
I don't accept that, Mr. Panchal. The responsibility of having a DPS lies with the premises license holder. The license itself was issued and your client was operating in accordance with that license. And if the evidence from the reviewing officer and supported by the Met Police is suggesting that they visited the premises during the licensable hours as per the license, then those are breaches that have occurred, and that is my advice to the chair and panel.
Okay, thank you very much. But you may be absolutely right because you're more learned than me. But my point of view is that there is no licensable activity taking place, or it cannot take place because the license is incomplete, because there is no DPS. For the license to be enforced or be enforced has to have A, a license holder, B, a DPS. So here in this case, there is no DPS. Hence, Mr. Bob Deere on 16th or 17th of June went to the premises to say, hey, you cannot sell alcohol or carry on any licensable activity because you haven't got a DPS. So automatically the licensable activity stops. So he cannot carry on any licensable activity. If there are no licensable activities to be carried on, where do we get the breaches to be? How could we enforce all the conditions? That's my view. I'm not saying I'm legally, maybe I might not be legally right, but that's my point of view.
Yes, but if you're making representations in this type of committee, Mr. Panchal, then you need to be clear on what the legal position is to be able to represent your client in an accurate manner. Chair, that's my advice on the matter so far.
Thank you. Mr. Panchal, have you further representation?
No, thank you very much, Chair. That's what my feeling is, that
oh yes, that's right. I turned to Mr. Deer, didn't I? I turned to Mr. Deer to ask questions. So time flies, doesn't it, Mr. Deer?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, so Mr. Panchal was also saying that because duty diverted alcohol, i.e. smuggled goods, was on the premises, because there's no DPS, that is not an offence under the Licensing Act, section 122.
Sorry, Chair, there was no, I'm not saying
Sorry,
that.
Mr. Panchal.
Now I'm answering this
question.
question.
Can I ask Mr. Deer that, no, Mr. Deer, one, can you put your points in the form of a question rather than statements where I'm slightly uncertain at what point you want Mr. Panchal to come in? So can you rephrase that point in the form of a question for the benefit of the panel?
Chair, that's what I said. Is it Mr. Panchal's opinion then that smuggled goods are allowed to be on their premises because the licence, in his opinion, wasn't in force?
No, Chairman. No, Chairman. You cannot have any illegal activity in any trading place. May I tell you, in any trading place. When we are talking about licensable activity, we are talking about licensable activity in supply of alcohol. You need a premises license for anything to do supply of alcohol, regulated entertainment, or late night refreshment. We're talking about when.
Okay, Mr. Panchal. Yep. So
that you could do a legal activity on any trading place. I'm not with that.
Right. So is your client in agreement that an offence has been committed by having duty diverted product on the premises, i.e. the bottle of famous grouse?
If there is one, then he's breached. That's all I can say.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Would you agree then? Well, the CCTV conditions. So you're saying they are not enforceable because there's no DPS. Is that your opinion then?
That's my opinion.
Right. So, and obviously when you offered to suspend the license for a month, well, your suggestion was to suspend the license for a month and to move on. Why did you offer that? Because if you think nothing's been done wrong.
Yeah, but we've just received a personal license from the Redbridge Borough, and we've seen that your visits and everything. So I would like to go back to my client. This is my view, to go back to my client Christian and make him sit down and make him understand and make sure that as soon as the licensable activity begins, that everything is in place. That's my view.
Okay. And could you tell me something about your client's experience in the licensing trade?
Well, according to, he's undergone the course with us. He understands the licensable activities. He understands the license, what licenses are. He has got a staff who's fully conversant with it. So that's the way he's got his experience from.
Okay. So what I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. All right, then, are you or he in agreement, or would you agree that since he applied for this license in March, that's his experience, even though I've never seen him on the premise in all my visits, and he actually said that he'd be working one shift a week.
Yeah, I can ask you. He's
If you ask him, he's there, isn't he? So yeah, if you could.
Could you answer that question? Sorry, is he?
Hey, I'm really sorry, I was on mute. For some reason it's a bit the connectivity is a bit low. Can I get you to repeat the question, please?
I asked Mr.
Question was what?
Thank you,
Mr. Deere, carry on.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Deere.
The question was your experience in the licensing trade. Basically, you applied for this license on the 16th of March, I think it was, without shuffling my papers again. And you said, or Mr. Pancho said on your behalf, that you would be working one shift a week in that shop. And all my visits, I've never seen you there. Is that your experience?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, to answer to your question, the days you've come in, unfortunately, I wasn't working. The days I've been working, I haven't seen you. That's the truth. Now, I've been working there a few times. I've done what I have to do there. But of course, my aim with the shop is to, run it under my business. Not really be part in the sense of not really, be working in there. I just want to run it, if that makes sense to you guys, because that's the aim of myself. Because I'm, of course, having another job, another priority at Metrobank. I'm in a really good position, and so that's what my main focus is on. And of course, this is just a side business for me.
Okay. And are you still working 2 days a week at Metrobank?
Yes. There'll be circumstances where I've worked more than 2 days, depending on the the schedules I'm on. So for example, this week I'll be on 3 days. Due to the fact I've got a meeting to attend at Manchester. This will be a meeting with the CFO and the CEO, in regards to an expansion. So yeah, respectively, I've been working 3 days this week.
Okay.
Of course. Now with my, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. One last question for me anyway is the CCTV working?
Yes. So the CCTV is working. It's working fine. But there has been issues with the CCTV. I have spoken to the CC, the one that operates it for us. I have spoken to the person, of course. He did say there was some issues with it due to, I'm not sure entirely why, but he said there was some connectivity issues and everything. So he said he'll be there to fix it and everything. And I said, I want a final, I said, I'm ready to pay however much it is, but I want it to be working finally. And yeah, so from now on, it's basically working perfectly fine. Because
that was the same thing said previously, that it wasn't working when I asked for CCTV on the 10th and the 18th of June. Yes, Mr. Dhin. Now quickly to that question, you've made numerous amount of statements that you requested CCTV. I absolutely understand your question. Now, I remember asking you, would you like to see the CCTV footage of, the accusation you was making against me at that point? Now, I offered it to you on the phone call. Would you like to see Would you like to see the CCTV footage? This was completely up to you whether to say yes or no, but at that circumstance, you did not say anything. Now, at that point, you cannot accuse me of or say the CCTV wasn't working or anything. Now, let me finish my sentence, and then, of course, you can speak. But yeah, once again, so I offered you, would you like to see the CCTV footage? This was completely up to you. Whether you said yes or no, I don't remember, but you didn't see. That's all I remember. Now, at that point, the CCTV was working fine and it was working perfectly fine. So it was completely up to you to see the footage or not, but you definitely decided not to see it. Right. Have you finished? Yeah. Right. Does Mrs. Thea Karen know how to work these CCTV? So there has been a course I personally made attend. It was an online virtual type of course for the CCTV, and yes, she does know how to operate. But yeah, we are trying to fit in a new system in terms of the CCTV to try and get it to my mobile. Yeah, go ahead. So when I asked her in front of another officer, I might add, can I see the CCTV now? Yeah. Why did she reply she can't work it on every occasion? And yesterday morning, and I've actually sent a request to you and received no reply to my email for CCTV of yesterday morning.
Yeah, so
I'm sure that copy is going to come, isn't it?
Yeah, it will certainly come. I mean, to your first question, she's not really that great with technology. Let's be honest with that. I have explained it to her a few times how to run it. So I was thinking, you know, let's when the guy comes to fixes everything, giving me a finest thing just to go through it one more time and try and download it straight to her phone. So whenever you guys come through, rather than showing you guys directly, we could show you directly through our phones, which would make lives easier for both me and you.
Okay.
Right. So,
So
my 3 requests for CCTV, where I must refute your allegation. I'm accusing you of something, but I've never received any, and I can assure you, I've never ever said no to CCTV.
Well, then why didn't you check the CCTV footage when I asked you to?
Because I was standing in the shop when I spoke to you. Why couldn't you have told me there, done it there?
I asked you, and you didn't say anything then.
Could you have played it back for me there and then?
Of course I would have. I mean, I asked you the question. It wasn't up to you to say yes or no. And unfortunately, you didn't say yes. So
no.
That is
Do you know what I said? Download it. Download a copy for me. That was my reply.
Well, I'm pretty sure you did not say that.
Well, I've got, unless you've got a video of voice recording of me, I have an officer that stood beside me when I made that request.
Well, unfortunately, I did not catch that, and I don't remember you saying that.
Yeah, okay. Chair, I have no other questions. Thank you at this moment.
Thank you. PC Brown?
You want to connect?
Yes, please. I have a couple of questions. Thank you. Can I clarify, is there any dispute about whether or not the sale of alcohol has been taking place?
Right. So I've got a few questions for you as well, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry, your question, as you was asking me the question, it was basically lagging. Can I get you to repeat that, please?
Yeah, sorry, I'd just like to clarify, is there any dispute about whether the sale of alcohol has been taking place?
What do you mean in terms of the dispute? What do you mean by that?
Is it accepted from the evidence that obviously myself has given and the evidence from the Mr. Deere has given? We have stated that the sale of alcohol has been ongoing. Is that I'm not clear whether or not that's been disputed or whether that's agreed that it's accepted that has been happening.
I mean, in terms of that, just a quick question to you. You know the pictures you submitted.
No, Mr. Excuse me. It's not for you to ask questions at this time. At the moment, we're directing questions to Mr. Panchal through Mr. Panchal, some of which you are responding to because you're better informed. You are not in the business at the moment of asking anybody else questions. That's not where we are at this point in the meeting.
Fair enough. I respect that. Would I be able to ask questions?
Sorry, I'll come in on behalf of my client. Yes, Penny. What can you, Christian? I'll answer that. Sorry, Penny.
Penny has asked whether or not it is admitted that alcohol has been sold in breach of the license.
Chairman, like I said earlier, that there was one mistake carried out, but since we've informed to Christian that till we get the personal license, we cannot carry on any licensable activity. That means we cannot sell alcohol. So all alcohol was covered and alcohol was not sold. That was the instruction by Christian to his staff and everybody else. And I've now also got in my office, we've received Christian's, I can just lay you out, the personal.
Well, can you hold that? Because that's not a question that's currently been asked. So if you can park that, because you will obviously have an opportunity to speak again later.
Yeah.
PC Brown.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to sort of go back to that. Can you please clarify then, at what point did the sale of alcohol sort of stopped? Obviously, it was happening. You admitted there was a mistake. There was a sale of alcohol. At what point then are you saying that stopped?
Well, when we were informed on 17th of June, thereafter, the alcohol should not have been sold. That is the instructions we carried out, and that's the instruction Christian carried out to his staff also.
So apologies, did Mr. Deere not attend on the 10th of June? Was it not made clear then that the sale of alcohol should not have been taking place? So would they not have been aware then? That's
where I'm coming back to. It's not 17th, it's the 10th of June. As soon as Mr. Deere approached the premises to say, you selling alcohol, And then and she said, oh, we got a license. And then we were informed that yes, and I informed them that we cannot sell till we get the DPS on board. So very next day, the alcohol was supposed to not sell.
So is it then disputed that when I attended on the 17th of June and I witnessed the staff member taking the bottles of Stella from the customer, placing them in the carry bag, is it being disputed that the sale of alcohol was ongoing at that point?
Well, the staff should not be selling. That's our point of view. And if
so you accept that it was happening, but it shouldn't have been. Is that correct? I'm sorry, I'm a little unclear.
Yeah, the Christian's instructions and our instructions to Christian was that the alcohol should not be sold.
Mr. Panchal, I'll see if I can be helpful here. PC Brown is not asking you what instructions were given. PC Brown is asking, on what occasions do you accept that alcohol was sold? Was alcohol sold on the 10th of June? Do you accept that or not?
Well, Chairman,
and she's now asked if you accept if it was sold on the 17th of June. I understand your point that instructions may have been given. She's asking if you acknowledge or dispute that alcohol was sold at a later date.
I can ask Christian. Christian, was alcohol sold on 17th of June by the staff?
No.
And if it was sold, was it a mistake by the client, or was it a breach, or were you aware of it?
Well, as far as I'm aware of, we weren't selling any alcohol at that point.
Okay. That's your answer, Chairman.
And is it again then disputed, presumably, that alcohol was sold yesterday, I believe, from Mr. Deer's evidence when he witnessed a few sales? Is that also disputed, or is it accepted that alcohol was sold yesterday?
Well, yesterday there was no alcohol sold, but my staff did tell me where there was an incident where someone tried to steal a can of beer from the fridge.
Okay, if I can sort of maybe talk about the fridges at this point then. Obviously there was a condition on the licence, condition number 5, that the alcohol must be securely stored behind lockable shutters when the premises are open, but outside of the licensable hours. So obviously if they're not being sold, it should have been behind lockable shutters. Can you please explain to me when this was installed, when that was put in place? And obviously you're now mentioning about the theft of a can of beer, which obviously I wasn't aware of. If you can give a little bit more detail where that was taken from, or not behind a lockable shutter at that point.
Yep. Okay. So, right. In terms of the shutter, we put that in about a few weeks ago. I do not know the exact dates. Do you require the exact date?
No,
so a significant period after the license has been in place. During which
so we took action straight away. Of course, due to the fact it was COVID, I could not get people straight away. So I had to do my research and take some time, but I eventually got some people to put the shutters down for the fridge, and I've got that all done. Now, in terms of your second question for yesterday, of course, due to the incident, what's happened? Of course, what happens is my staff there drinks tea, and and we also have some builders over, and they drink tea as well. Now, of course, the fridge to put the milk, unfortunately, was not working. And I have evidence of that because I have requested that to be repaired. But due to the fact it wasn't working, she must have opened the fridge to put the milk in. And that's when the incident happened where someone came in and took a can of beer.
Just to sort of be clear, obviously going back to the shutters, and the condition is there that's saying that, you know, the alcohol should be locked away basically when it shouldn't be sold. So the fact that no alcohol should have been sold since the day the license was issued because there's been no DPS. If it was unable to be locked away, do you not think makes more sense that the alcohol should not have been on the shop floor at all? It's not been permitted to be sold without a DPS there.
Yeah, I understand. However, we have shutters that is completely shut. The beer is completely shut, so no one can access it. Unfortunately, due to what happened yesterday, which was a silly mistake on our side, I believe. But that is the main reason that incidents happened. Of course, this is only, in my opinion, as far as I'm aware, it was only temporary. So I thought I have done it twice now. You know, take all the alcohol out the shop and then put it to the back. and then re-put it all everything in the store. And I've done that again, taking it all out. And I thought the best thing to do is put the shutters down, of course, as requested. Due to the mistake in terms of putting milk in is what happened yesterday. But that issue would not have happened if it wasn't for the milk.
Okay, going back to the issue of obviously Mr. Thivakaran being on the premises, is it accepted that it was quite clear that he should not be on the premises, and also that it was pointed out that this was a breach of the licence conditions on the 17th of June, that licence breach was actually pointed out to you? Was that made clear?
That was made very clear to me. Unfortunately, of course, this was an error on my side. It was misjudgment. In other words, of course, I am very new to the business, and of course, I'm only 23, and of course, I'm doing everything I can. This is, of course, just not me alone. I do need the guidance and support from my parents, and of course, due to what's going on in terms of the licenses and everything. It's been a very stressful period for me, where they've told me to give up with the shops and everything. Of course, there was a point where I needed a really big favor. No one was there to help me out, and Mr. Thivakaran was the only person there that was the last minute and the last option. I had to reach out for help. And yes, this was a complete misjudgment from me, but yeah, I had to ask him for guidance, and that's when this mistakes happened.
So just to be clear, at the time you're saying you realised it was a mistake then, so it was something that you knew that shouldn't happen, but you felt you had no other option.
Yes. So, and in terms of that, I personally thought yes, he wasn't allowed to be in the building or everything. But obviously, I asked him for help and everything, and I did not expect him to be coming into the place because he knows he's already banned and everything. But of course, it's happened. Of course, I wasn't there at that point. I did not expect him to be at the premises. I thought he would be outside, if anything. But yeah, unfortunately, he came in, and of course.
So you were happy that at the time, though, that you obviously knew the conditions of your license, and you were happy that they were in place at that time.
I was happy with it. I knew what's going on. Of course, I even told him as soon as the conditions came out that, of course, they expect me not. Of course, they do not expect you to be in the premises, and of course, this is a new journey for me, and I don't want anything, to go against myself in terms of you being in the premises. And he was like, I respect, I understand that. And of course, once again, like I mentioned, I did not expect him to be at the premises at that point, but yeah, he was in there.
Did you think that he could resolve the issues then? Obviously, you're wanting him to be helping out with the shop business, with the shop fridges. Did you not obviously see that is him involved in the business, and also accept that he was going to be setting foot onto the premises to deal with that?
No, so I asked him for a point of help where he recommended me some people. Of course, these were the people he knew himself. So because due to the fact, once again, due to COVID, I could not get anyone, literally anyone. And of course, Thivakaran was the last point of help. And when I asked him, and he said, yes, I know certain people, let me just get in touch and everything. I said, okay, fair enough. I'll come down to help. And I was pretty sure he was aware of the fact he was not allowed to enter the premises. And for some reason, I don't know what was going through his head, but yes, he did enter the premises. And of course, I did confront him after that, but it was too late, to confront him in terms of the fact why was he at the premises.
And to make it absolutely clear, Chairman and Penny, that again, Thivakaran is not permitted to conduct any business on behalf of Hanwell News. So he's not getting involved into the business.
Thank you for that, Mr.
He's also not allowed on.
It's like asking.
He's also not allowed on the premises. We've been around that loop, and I don't intend to go through it again. PC Brown, have you further questions?
We do
Thank
agree.
you.
Disputing that.
Mr. Panchal, PC Brown.
Thank you. Sorry, just one very quick question, just so I know sort of going forward with this. Can you just tell me, please, where Mr. Thivakaran is currently living? Is he actually living at the premises, above the premises, or behind it in the rear building at all?
Yep. So as far as I'm aware, and of course it's been some time since I've seen him now, but yeah, as far as I'm aware, to be honest with you, yes, he does live upstairs at 116A. Now, what I have done is, of course, I do not want any connection with him. I'm pretty sure he doesn't even know this himself, but I don't want any connection with him. And of course, I've suffered enough in terms of him entering the premises and everything. So what I'm doing is I'm closing the back gate, so make sure he has no access to coming in from from upstairs to downstairs. So what I have done is I have started doing some construction in terms of that. Of course, I got in touch with the landlord, who was very respectful and understood my problem, and who decided to help me and gave me the permission to, do some type of an extension where he's not allowed to, come straight through the back or anything, because of course that will mean he does not enter the premises at all.
Okay, so he is living above, and his wife is working in the premises. Is that correct as well?
Correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's clarified a few things. Thank you very much.
Okay. To Councillor, before I bring in colleagues, Mr. Panchal, I'm sure, remembers that I was a member of the panel that deliberated in May. So there's a few points that crossed my mind. It was a very strong part of your presentation at that time, Mr. Panchal, and your client was present by phone in some way, was aware of what was happening, that there was no relationship between your client and Mr. Tivakaran beyond the fact that they were both members of the Sri Lankan community in the area and therefore had, a tenuous link. But it was clear there was no view. Mr. Tivakaran at that point was not living in the flat upstairs. So I'm trying to get my head around how we reached a situation where not only was Mr. Tivakaran being invited to act as an assistant, but that Mrs. Tivakaran was the principal assistant in the shop. So I suppose that's my first question. Given that there was no relationship between the families.
Let me make it very clear. My point of view at that hearing and today is the same. Mr. Tivakaran and Kishan have no relation whatsoever. So may I make it very clear? What I said at that particular hearing, and I'll say it now again, they do not have relation. That's very clear.
Right, so let me just repeat everything I've just said then, Mr. Panchal. At that point, my memory is we were told that the flat was vacant. Certainly Mr. Tivakaran wasn't living in it. So since that point, he's moved back upstairs above the shop he used to operate. And his wife is the main shop assistant within the shop. So how did that come about if there's no relationship between them?
Well, there is. You're talking about the relationship, and you're talking about an employee-employer. So that Kishan can answer, because as far as I was concerned, and I'm still concerned, and I still know that there is no relation between them. So Kishan could answer.
Perhaps he can. Perhaps Kishan can answer. How did the wife of the previous license holder come to be your main assistant in the shop?
Yep. So what happened was I needed a temporary staff who knew certain things, and of course and run around. Of course, she's just working temporary until I get 2 permanent staff. Of course, I am on the search of doing that. And once again, I need the license, of course, to put everything into permanent places. Once I get the license, I will find the perfect staff. Of course, she knows she's working temporary anyways. Yeah, she just has temporary staff, to be honest with you guys. It's just due to COVID. I do not want to straight away take anyone through an interview or speak to anyone directly. It's best for me to go through this way, and it's just for the safety and security purposes. I decided to hire her for temporary reasons.
No, but how did that come about? Since you have, as Mr. Panchal's just reiterated, there isn't a direct relationship, as we were told, between your family and their family. So how did she come to be employed by you?
How did she come to? So how did she start working into my shop? Is that the question?
That is exactly the question.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where I just remembered. So she went into this was at the start. when she came into the shop one time, and then of course told me what she can do and everything, and then you know, she mentioned that she's got experience and everything, and I thought, okay, you know what, I could have for temporary reasons, and that's when I decided to take over and, you know, slowly started putting it into place. And then of course I let her know, yeah, you can certainly work in here. And then of course she does, once again, she does know she's working temporary, and yeah, it's really.
So she made an unsolicited visit to the shop to offer her services.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. My next, this is follow up to what PC Brown said. Really, the license was the panel approved the license with conditions in May. It's now mid-September. At no point in the intervening period has anybody been qualified within the shop to sell alcohol. Am I correct?
So are you stating
There's
that
never
no
been
one...
anybody qualified to sell alcohol?
Sorry.
Am I right in saying there's never been anybody, there's never been a DPS holder in the period since the license was granted? Okay. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of why you deemed it necessary to have a fridge or fridges full of alcohol for almost all of that period, whether or not an appropriate shutter was attached.
Right. To your first question, we are qualified to sell alcohol as far as I'm aware. We have another staff, but we don't have the license. And of course, as far as I'm aware, so the problem is, of course, you know, there's been a hunt and chase in terms to get my personal, you know, alcohol license and premises license. But in terms of the fridges and everything, so we were told at the start, we can take everything out, put it back in, take everything out, put it back in. So it was a bit of a roller coaster ride, in other words. But so once I put everything back in, I did put everything in a shutter, and I didn't think that would be an issue because it's shut.
Right. Well, we'll come to the fact. We'll come to the fact that the shutters were not seen to operate. Mr. Panchal, you made an assertion that there are builders operating, and that builders brought their own alcohol. Are you saying to the panel that all of the alcohol that we saw in that fridge in the photograph provided by Mr. Deere is alcohol brought by the builders?
No, I didn't say that the whole of the alcohol brought in the fridge was by the builders. There is a freezer where 2-3 cans of those alcohol were put into the freezer. There is a picture. If you look at the last statement.
Yes, we're aware of the picture.
Yeah, and you see those 1, 2, 3 cans of beer. There are only 3 cans of beer that we are talking about.
So you're saying that the builders employed
the builders left the 3 cans of beer in the fridge.
Brought with them cans of high alcohol beer in order to drink while working at your client's premises.
While they would finish work and when they would go home, they would take it with them. So they put it in the fridge, the freezer. Then if you look at the picture that the last statement sent in by Bob Deere, and the pictures, 2 pictures, the last picture you see, that's the beer we're talking about that the builders brought in.
But all of the other beer belongs to your client?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and why is the fridge not secured? In the photograph.
I don't know, sir. The fridge had the shutter, I think. And
I mean, well, there is a shutter, but a shutter which is not shut. I think it's a moot point whether you would call that a shutter, isn't it? It's not. The fridge isn't shut and it isn't locked at that time of the morning. And evidence has been presented that individuals entered the shop and left with beer. the shutter of the fridge is open, would you accept that this is an unfortunate situation, given that your client's defence is that alcohol wasn't sold?
Yeah, Chairman, that shouldn't have been there. So, yeah, we agree that shouldn't be there.
Okay, well, I'll hold for now. Councillor Kuma, have you got questions? Whoever's got their phone in the background, could they meet? Thank you.
Okay, well, my question was also based around Mrs. Thivakaran's employment in the shop, but you know, that's been discussed quite in quite a bit of detail. This question is, she was hired for her experience. That's what Mr. Thangamani has said. And she knew everything. So why was she aware of the new conditions regarding shutters, regarding keeping alcohol on the premises secure? And what sort of training and how many staff do you have?
I mean, the staff are trained by a training manual which is provided to them. May I also say in my statement that I earlier wanted to say to you that 2-3 days ago, that is on the 8th of September, we are now on 16th of September. So we received the license on 9th, 10th of September. This is what it is. Mr. Krishan. So once the license is...
Mr. Panchal, you can make these points. Can you just answer the questions that are being asked to you at the moment, and we can address other points later on. So if you can just answer Councillor Kumar's question about how many staff and what training they have.
Yeah, they have a training manual in place that we've given them. Then all the staff are trained in that from the training manual.
Who are all the staff? I just seem
at the present moment, I think he's only got 2 staff.
And who are I mean, there are 2 staff, including Mrs. Thivakaran?
Including Mrs. Thivakaran, yeah.
And have both been trained under the new premises license?
Not for premises, they're trained under the premises license. Yes, trained for sale of alcohol.
So, and my question about, she was hired for her experience. Mrs. Thivakaran was hired for her experience. So was she aware of all the new conditions?
Yes, she was aware of, ma'am, of the new conditions.
Including the condition that her husband wasn't allowed to enter the premises.
Yeah, exactly. She was aware. She was aware of that.
Okay, yet the breach did take.
Yeah, Mr. Yeah. I think Kishan did explain to you what happened when the husband was in the shop.
Okay, so my other question was going to be, when was the Red Bridge license issued? And you've just said 10 September. So, and is the CCTV working now? I know that Mr. Thangamani has addressed that. He claims that it was always working and it's in place, and he's able to produce any recordings if needed. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, and the beer that was placed in the fridge by the workman, is the same beer sold in the shop, or is it on those premises belonging?
Which beers are we talking about, ma'am?
The beer the workman placed in the fridge.
No, the beers that is on the freezer that the workman has put in. I don't think we sell that beers.
Could Mr. Thani confirm that?
Kishan, can you confirm that? Because I do not know what stock you have.
Apologies, I was on mute. Yeah, sorry. What was the question, if you don't mind me repeating that?
I'm asking if the beer that was
the question was, do you sell the beer that was found in the freezer?
No, we do not sell that.
Yeah.
Okay.
What beer do you sell?
Well, you know, I'm not entirely good with the names. However, you know, the pictures that were submitted against me, you know, some of the pictures, one of them I had the name called Strong. Does that make, do you know which one I'm talking about?
Nope.
One of the, so I'm looking at the pictures right now. One of them says Strong.
Which pictures are you talking about, Kishan?
Go or something. Let me just get this.
Oh,
Chair,
yeah.
it's the last picture from yesterday that was sent to him yesterday with the request.
That question.
That
is the picture we just asked you a question about.
Yeah, so that's what you're asking me.
That's
Yes,
the question that Councillor Kuma asked you. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So to that question, I'm answering the fact that we do not sell that beer. So that beer is actually sold probably next door. That's what they must have grabbed it from.
Okay.
I guess the reason I asked my question is that technically, really, you don't sell any beer.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, technically we don't sell any beer.
You're not licensed. You're not currently authorised to sell any beer.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So wasn't the correct answer to my question none?
Yeah, so I am stating the fact that beer wasn't
Councillor
from us.
Kuma. Okay, Councillor Kuma, do you have any more questions?
That's it for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dhin, sir.
Yeah, to Mr. Panchal. Mr. Panchal, you know, I normally try to keep a very open mind about these cases. And what I'm trying to understand is, here is the case against you or your client, which you are representing. And you have come today in front of the licensing panel. But prior to that, you know, when you was trying to send emails every single day or every other day to Redbridge Council, did you share the evidence with anyone in the licensing department at Ealing Council or with Robert Deere or other officers?
I can answer that very, very, very clear. I'll put it like this. We work very closely with all the licensing officers. Bob Deere will agree with me. We get in touch and we talk to all the license officers working in the department, young, junior and senior and processing people at the council. And we did tell them that we are waiting for a license to come from Redbridge. We've been emailing, we've been ringing Redbridge, they're not picking up. We even asked Kishan personally to go down to Redbridge Council on very, very many occasions. So we are constantly in touch with Ealing Borough, not only for this matter, but on so many matters, because we have so many matters, as you know, you may be seeing me in the committee meetings every now and then. So we do get in touch and we talk with the council at every other point.
I'm sure you work with the council, and I have no reason not to believe that. But question I'm asking.
Yes, we have not shared any of those emails with the council.
You didn't share any of those emails?
We haven't shared any of those emails. But only we can say that when we put the application into Redbridge Borough Council, I can give you the date also we put the application in, which was way back in April 2020. So we put the date in, we put the application for him in April, May. So you can imagine we're now in September, and we received this license, which is in front of me here, in September, which we are now going to send it to the London Borough, to the Ealing Borough just now, and give them the license number for the license to be activated, the premises license.
Okay, you know, there is the issue with Mr. Thivakaran, that the previous DPS and the relationship between Mr. Thangawal, sorry, let me get the name, Mr. Thangagami and Mr. Thivakaran. You know, we are led to believe that this premises changed hands.
Sorry?
Am I correct?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't.
I said the previous DSP, DP, yeah, Mr. Thivakaran and Mr. Thangagami, that business has changed hand. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So is there any evidence you had shared with any council officers, or why didn't you send that kind of evidence prior to the meeting so it was in the pack?
The evidence that they have to share is Mr. Krishan is now changing hands for the lease, and those lease documents have to be sent to the council. That's the only evidence that Mr. Krishan has to share with the council.
Yeah, I understand what you have to share, but you see, here is a long history with these premises. And yeah, at the last meeting, you was there. Perhaps you would have advised your client, Mr. Thangagami, what steps he need to take, because you would have been at the meeting, you would have heard the concerns raised by the committee members, so you would have gone way beyond the line of duty. You understand? You would have gone, you would have taken extra steps to ensure that everything was way above normal. And why didn't you take those kind of opportunities?
I think we have taken that steps when we put the application in. We take the steps immediately when we put the new application in and when Mr. Kishan takes over. And I can tell you that Mr. Kishan will be able to answer what steps we took and what steps we decided. I think that will clarify how much steps we've taken. So I'll ask Kishan now to answer. Were you
no, what I'm saying is I don't want a verbal statement. I want to see some kind of evidence of those steps you have taken. And that's what I'm trying to that's what I'm trying to ascertain, whether those things had happened. Now you will tell me something, but I have no way of verifying that, would I?
Yeah, but the steps we take is a discussion state. When we sit down with a client, we talk with them and we tell them exactly what steps to be taken, and then what conditions he's going to follow and what he has to do if he wants to take over the premises. We can't go anything beyond that.
Well, we'll review obviously the evidence that's been put in front of us.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Dinser, do you have other questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
No, just one further one from me, because it was raised and I don't think it was settled. Has the premises lease been transferred into the name of your client, Mr. Panchal?
Your best answer to that, my answer is yes. The process
it's yes or no, surely.
Yes, the process is on, but Mr. Kishan will also answer that where the process is at the moment, because the process.
Yes. Well, I asked the question because a condition of the lease was that you provide evidence of that transfer within 3 months, which would have been last month. And that evidence, from what we understand from Mr. Deer, hasn't been provided.
Yes, it hasn't been provided, but the documents are on its way. Means that the lawyers are doing the transfer of the lease at the moment, which will all these documents.
So you failed. So let me be clear. You failed to deliver the change of lease within the 3 months that were specified.
Yes, we haven't done that. Let's put it like that. Yeah. But the process is on. It's COVID-19 now, and the process is on. Everything is delayed. You can see how long it took for a personal license to come.
Did you provide updates to Ealing Council licensing officers about the progress of that transfer?
Yes, we did. We've been talking to Ealing Council on this case literally every other day.
No, about the specifics of the transfer of the lease.
Yes, we have. That's what I'm saying. We talk
Okay.
with the Leading Council every
We'll
other
come
day.
back. Well, Mr. Deere, perhaps you can clarify, are you aware of any correspondence regarding progress on the transfer of the lease?
Short answer, sir, is no. And my longer answer would be I've actually had someone check our system for us, and we've had no updates since the 16th of March 2020.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kuma, you have a further question, then I want us to move on, I think.
Yes, you say you got the license from Redbridge on the 10th of September. Today is the 16th. Why has it taken all this amount of time to actually have it registered, recorded?
We've just received in our office on the 10th of September, 10th to 11th of September, and we are now in a process. And then we had a hearing come up. So we're now in a process of sending it to the Ealing Borough Council to say that license is now here. So can you put him as a DPS now?
Okay.
Yes, that's fine. Thanks.
There's another thing that I also would like to stress. This hearing was supposed to be.
Well, you've got the opportunity. You have the opportunity to sum up. So if you can hold that point, because we're only doing questions and answers. At this point, it's my responsibility to indicate any conditions offered or agreed during the discussions. I'm not aware of any conditions that were agreed, but if I haven't misrepresented you, Mr. Panchal, I think you offered a 1-month suspension of the license. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman. I offered that 1-month suspension in making sure that we go back on the drawing table and make sure that what we've incurred or what we've come across now can be rectified and everything can be back to, means everything is what it should be. So we could work along with the responsible authorities and everybody, and I could work with the client and say, look,
okay,
what's wrong here, but now everything is back in place. So let's get into place.
No, that's fine. Now, staying with you, this is your opportunity to sum up, Mr. Panchal.
Chairman, all I can say is, number one, I do apologize because I personally had to undergo an operation myself, so we had to adjourn this hearing in previously. So I'd like to thank the committee for agreeing to hear the hearing now. And since I've been off and matters have gone up and down in health-wise, that is why things have not been tackled as quickly as it should have been. I have answered all the questions. Mr. Kishan has answered all the questions, and we feel that whatever breach, a little breach that has occurred, we apologize. My client, on behalf of my client, we apologize, and I think there is a way forward by going back onto the drawing board and have a suspension of 1 month in making things work. We've had a delay from the Redbridge Borough Council regarding the personal license, which we now have in our hand. I'm only working 2 days a week due to my health, but it will be tackled and done immediately and settled in. The matter can be settled in ASAP. So that's my view to the committee.
Thank you very much. Now, applicant, to briefly sum up, Mr. Deere.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we've heard a lot of what we've heard from the original new premises license application, so I won't go over that about relationships and people like that. But what the one thing I would like to say is that the new premises license holder has no experience of running a business, which has been very well highlighted, and of an off license that has a blemish past. And when it does go wrong, who does he go and speak to? His friend, who he used to live with, and has employed his wife, Mr. Thera Karen. This application was put together just to get the license back, and that's very evident We've heard evidence today of my in respect of pictures that I submitted last night of Skull Super Strength lager that's been left in the fridge by builders, and I think that's one answer we got, where that's where the man got it from. And then we hear the other answer, he got the beer that when we walked in, and he's got it in his hand, that it was actually in their fridge under the shutter with the milk. Well, two things: one, milk shouldn't be next to beer, and two, if the shutter had been completely down, he wouldn't have got his hand. But if I can just refer you to those pictures when you're making your decision, the last two, one, there are no cans of Perla Black Label on that bottom shelf, and unless he laid on the floor and put his arm up, I would like to have seen CCTV of him laying on the floor and putting his arm up and taking a can that shouldn't have been there, because it's over the strength limit of what is allowed. I put in my statement that the Skull beers were under the ice. They were concealed, they were hidden. And also I'd like you just to refer you to picture 53 and 54 of the committee report that clearly shows that's what they used to sell. It's on the middle shelf, straight in front of you. Skull Super Strength. That's why it's still on the premises, because it's come from the back there. And I think this license should just be revoked, very sadly, in a short space of time. But 3 breaches or 3 sales yesterday morning, witnessed by licensing officers who got to the shop at 6 o'clock in the morning, because that's the intelligence we got. So my recommendation of verification of this license still stands. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The panel will retire to deliberate together with the legal advisor and the clerk. Do we have, I've forgotten because a lot of time's gone by, do we have a time where we're meant to broadcast the decision for this case? Can I ask the clerk to
yes, Chair.
Remind me?
The decision is scheduled to be made at 2 p.m, but we have the other case after this one.
Well,
so the decision
it's not going to happen.
Okay, I can undertake to send an email around, maybe with a 15-minute, give 15 minutes warning for when the decision will be announced, or.
Sorry, Chairman.
Yeah, well, I think you'll understand that we've massively overrun the time that was allocated to us, and we're already more than an hour behind time for another hearing. So I can't commit. It wouldn't be fair to commit to make the decision, broadcast the decision at 2 o'clock. I hope you understand that.
Chairman, I clearly understand that, and I'll request Cornelia Harding to email us whenever it's done, because you have 5 days anyway. So we'll wait for the email once the decision has been made.
Okay.
I'm happy to wait.
Can I make one
That's
statement?
Very helpful. No statements. There's no time for statements now. That
I understand, but
over,
this is something. This is in terms of an incorrect error on
well,
one of
I can only reiterate that we are past that point of the agenda. The panel decision will be explained in writing and notice sent within 5 days. So later today, we will email to let you know how it goes. Thank you all very much for your patience.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chair.